We experience a variety of emotions every day: fear, sadness, anger, happiness, and a lot many emotions. We need to know what our emotions are and what are they telling us. This is self-awareness. If we know about our emotions, we can regulate it better and we can understand about the others' emotions. Now, if we understand others' emotions, we are in a better position to regulate them and deal with them accordingly, deal with them with empathy. So hello and welcome to Podcast with Shabina. And the guest that we have today has 15 years of experience in marketing. She's a mom of tween and teen boys. She's a passionate founder of Likened Consulting, where she discusses about branding with respect to neuroscience and emotional intelligence as a tool. And she is also an emotional intelligence coach, where she teaches and delivers lessons about emotional intelligence, about regulating ourselves, about regulating others' emotions, and getting on a platform where you can amplify your skills and be in an environment where you can help your organization to grow, and you can also instill valuable insights in yourself for your personal development. So I welcome Ms. Nancy Habashi to Emotional Intelligence series on Podcast with Shabina. Hello, Nancy. How are you doing?
Shabina, great. Thank you so much for having me.
And welcome to the series.
Thank you.
So what do you think, Nancy, as a mom who's taking care of kids at home and you're also coaching people, you have a vast experience in terms of branding and marketing.
Yeah.
So where do you find time for yourself? I mean, for self-care?
Oh my goodness, that self-care word. So many things to say about that, don't we? Very good question, Shabina. I feel like there's a bit of a delusion around this concept of balance. You know, when we talk about self-care, the other word that immediately comes to mind for me is balance.
Balance.
And you have people out there saying, you know, you need to live a balanced life. You need to make sure that you're doing a little bit of everything. You watch people online who wake up in the morning and have these fantastic morning routines. And then, you know, they know exactly what they're going to eat and when they're going to do everything. Real life.
Yeah, it's very different.
Real life
glam
is
moms.
different.
Yeah.
And our definitions of self-care are very unique to the makeup of our life. And so for me, what I've learned over time is that the concept of balance is quite a delusion. And that balance is something that we achieve over the span of our lifetime rather than within a day's time. So that being said, my effectiveness as a parent and as a professional does get impacted if I don't make time and space for myself. So for me personally, something like exercise, which in my 20s was probably more because I wanted to be fit.
You still look like a 20.
Today, it's more about my mental health. So
Absolutely.
Working out, going to the gym, whatever movement it feels right for you, and that changes over time. At some point, it might have been weights. At another point, it may have been walking. Whatever it is, that movement supports my mental health. And then really just trying to carve out space during the day, even if that's 5 minutes of just walking out the door and looking at the sunshine. That helps me quite a bit as well. One other topic I just want to quickly mention that I feel we overlook as women and is starting to become more of a topic, especially now that I'm past my 40s, I'll say, is our feminine cycle.
Yeah.
The alignment of how we live our life and create space for ourselves based on our feminine cycle, and making sure that I'm slotting my activities based on when I know I'm going to have more energy versus when I know I need more rest. So those are the things that I start to consider in order to try to give
yes,
myself
I think it is so important to be in the moment and understand what your body is telling you,
Yes.
right? So as an emotional intelligence coach and somebody who's into branding, so how do you incorporate these skills? Because I've been looking at your Instagram videos on Likened Consulting, and you know they're so wonderful. And you're speaking about neuroscience, you're speaking about emotional intelligence. So how do you integrate all that into branding?
Into branding.
Yeah.
So we've known a lot about emotions when it comes to branding for a very long time. This is not news or anything new. I think big brands have been studying how humans behave and our consumer behavior for a long time, and really trying to get into the psyche of the way we make decisions.
To enhance the emotional touch.
Yes. Well, this is the caveat that we'll come to in a minute. Is it really to enhance the most emotional touch, or is it because they're looking to increase their profits, obviously?
Yeah.
Now, where the difference is sometimes between, what we see today in terms of emotional intelligence, where brands might be trying to tap into, learning about what the brands their personas seek to gain, where I am trying to bring in emotional intelligence as a brand strategist is to really think about brands and their personas as an interpersonal relationship. Human beings, we make decisions based on emotion more than we do rationale.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? And brands who've taken this put this to the test have seen that when they are simply identifying features and benefits versus tapping into story and playing with the needs, the basic needs that we all share as humans, they see drastic differences, up to 30% of a difference. Okay. So we all share the same human needs.
Yeah, we all human beings, and that's how we are connected with emotions.
Yes.
And, if somebody touches on our emotions and leads us to buying or taking action, so that's what I think branding is about, right?
Yeah. I mean, basically, when a client comes to me and says, Nancy, how do I differentiate myself in the market space? How can I differentiate myself? This is a big struggle because markets are getting saturated, especially when we're talking about luxury brands or brands that are not a need so much as they are a want. How do I differentiate? And for me, it always becomes about how do you personify yourself as a brand? We relate in relationships.
Yes.
Right. So if you think about your brand as a person rather than as a business, you start to think about, how do people connect emotionally? How can I develop a relationship with this persona that I'm trying to target and really tap into helping them go from basic needs such as I want to eat something delicious to I want to self-actualize. I have a purpose in my life. So you're looking at this Maslow's hierarchy of needs and you're going, how can I support a human being throughout those
in the
needs?
phase of self-actualization, maybe?
Yes.
Yes.
So, I mean, it depends on your service and your product.
Nancy, we're talking about emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence is the need of the hour, and it is the skill of today and future. So when you employ emotional intelligence and neuroscience into branding, how do you see it as a future? What are the aspects we need to consider?
Yeah. So definitely when it comes to the future of emotional intelligence and branding, so big brands have known about how emotions can impact, their business for a long time. And they've leveraged this understanding of human behavior and, consumer behavior in the way that they create their customer journeys. Technology now is insane. And, AI, machine learning, the Internet of Things, wearables, emotion detection and recognition softwares, they're now able to look at your face, pick up on the movements in your muscles, and actually react. This world of emotional detection and recognition is a growing industry. It's already grown a lot and is projected to reach, I think, 40 billion by 2028. So there's no shortage of future or of AI in branding and marketing. No shortage of that. But I think that's not the world I live in. Definitely not. The world I live in, we'll call it the vintage world of EI in branding.
Okay. That's the term that you give it.
For now. We're referring more to the authentic appeal of emotional intelligence and how we are creating interpersonal connections with the personas that we're seeking that are more around tapping into their sixth senses, that are related to our ability to truly help them achieve their primary needs of love, belonging, and self-actualization. When I communicate this to my clients, it helps them go, oh, it's actually not that hard. When you think about business, it complicates things.
Yeah.
But if you really sit there and go, it's just a relationship.
Give it a human touch.
Yeah, it's just a relationship. Humanize your approach to marketing and branding. You are simply trying to connect with somebody. How would you do it if you were meeting somebody for the first time? What would you do at the awareness stage when you're meeting them for the first time? What would you do, if you are now been in this relationship for many years and you want to create loyalty in that role? What would you do? So it's really just about thinking about it that way. Every brand has a personality.
Every brand has a personality.
So if you were to describe, I don't know, Nike as a brand, what's the personality of Nike? If you closed your eyes and said, I could see a person, what would they be wearing? What would they be saying?
Yeah.
What would they be thinking? How would they live their life? It becomes more about understanding relationships than it does about understanding the big monster of branding.
Right. It's targeting the emotions.
Yeah, absolutely.
To enhance selling.
100%. Your brand becomes the person, not the hero in the story. The hero in the story is your client, your customer.
Yes.
This is regardless of whether we're talking B2B or B2C. They are the hero of your story. You're the guide. Yeah. You are the person that's coming to help. They're reaching something.
Put it so beautifully.
Well, it's the concept of Yoda and Luke Skywalker, really. If you think about the story and human beings, we are very much driven by story. Storytelling has now been proven to be one of the best approaches to be able to reach people, because this is how we think. Yeah. And so when we think about the story of your brand, how do you act as the guide, as the Yoda to your Luke Skywalker? What are you going to do to be able to help Luke get what he really, really needs? So coming from that true and authentic place of wanting to help your end user is how you are going to differentiate as a brand, and your unique approach and style. The things you say, the way you act, the way you dress, the way you make them feel, the immersive experience of engaging with your brand, all 6 senses included. Yeah. That's how you differentiate.
Okay, that's wonderful to know about emotional intelligence and branding. And Nancy, so let's come back to motherhood. So you're a mom and I am a mom. And when you deal with your kids, do you also employ this emotional intelligence? And how do you deal with it?
Oh, goodness. So they say that we end up in the fields where we have the biggest gaps, where we try to teach what we know less about.
Yeah. This is how we are growing in that field. We are learning about it and we want to teach it. Yeah.
This is how I found myself in this space. Okay. It's not because I'm this super emotionally intelligent human being. It's because I had a gap in my own life. Adulthood, the most important relationships that we have in our adulthood, they are the ones that reveal the most about the wounds and the traumas that we might have carried from our childhood. And so when I got married and when I had children, it was then that I started to really discover myself. And in that, emotional intelligence entered my life, and I started to really try to learn the most I possibly could about it. And when it comes to my children, I am not perfectly emotional intelligent, not at all. Every single day is a learning experience. And what I'm simply trying to do, which I may not have had with my own parents and during our generation, I guess, is to show them that I'm a real person and that I have emotions, and that
finding out the gaps and then working on it.
Yeah. Right? And that I'm just like them. That I am learning about myself, and that throughout our lives, we are learning. An adult doesn't mean a complete person who knows all things. And so we work through these things together collectively. So everything from when they're younger, the discussion about emotions and being able to provide them with the language to express the nuances.
So you've been looking at the transition, right?
Yes.
From their early childhood days and when they are embarking on teenage, there has been a transition. And what kind of emotions do they deal with, and how do you tackle those emotions?
I mean, just to be able to finish the thought, just around the how I'm bringing in the principles. Language is one thing, but the most self-aware person in the world may have zero idea how to use that self-awareness and actually manage it. So trying to model, when I'm feeling frustrated or when I'm feeling angry or whatever it is I'm dealing with, what mechanisms or tools am I using in order to be able to regulate myself? What do I need to do? Is that the same for everybody? No, right? So what works for you? Trying different things and keeping those conversations open. That's how I do my best to bring that emotional intelligence at home.
Okay. And, I've been hearing this a lot, many times that with boys, and when we're dealing with boys, since I'm a mom of 2 girls and you're a mom of 2 boys. So have you experienced this? Because I want to know that people always tell this, that boys are less emotional. What is your take on this?
Definitely not. We can talk about boys specifically, and we can talk about teen boys specifically. Actually, there's no difference between boys and girls when it comes to emotions. This is a human thing, right? Now, as they grow and they start moving into the teen years, what happens is that emotional suppression begins. And that emotional suppression happens because of the implicit biases that we have and because of the narratives that are built into society around what is considered okay and not okay for boys. A great example that I've heard of before is, if a girl shows up at school with a Spider-Man backpack and a boy shows up at school with a glitter unicorn backpack, what's the difference between how we're going to react? It's the silliest example, but yes, it's the easiest way to illustrate that there are rules that seem to be...
Just like we've marked the colors for boys and girls, that boys wear blue and girls wear pink. I mean, this is absurd.
It's absurd, right? But, further to that, when it's been studied and when they've looked at teen boys, although the verbal is decreased, their verbal is decreased, somatically, there's no difference in how they are receiving stimuli and how they are reacting emotionally. And so in the end, all of that is suppressed. So, what I try to do as much as possible, and there's a big difference. I think we're going to be talking about early childhood and the difference between early childhood and the teen years. But, we really want to be mindful about the language we use and the space we create for our teenage boys. They look like they look with our eyes like they can handle themselves. Like suddenly they've grown. Okay. Their voices are deep.
Yeah.
Their shoes are very big. Sometimes they're even taller than you. Yes. And so you're under this impression he's a man. But mentally, emotionally, he's still 13, 14, 15, 16, 17.
Yes.
He still needs someone there to guide and support. Right. The role that may have been instructional.
And that is the part somehow we miss it, right?
Sometimes we allow the visual to get in the way. We allow the narrative of, you need to create independence, or you need...
Yes. Is it like, maybe it's not only with boys, even with girls. Like I have an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, and this 8-year-old, when she was 4 years old, my little baby was born. And I used to feel that now she's... And you have this impression of when you already have a little one at home, you feel like 4-year-old is you're a big child and all that. And now when this 4-year-old is, the little one is 4-year-old. And now I imagine that time when I used to treat my elder one as, you should understand, you're the elder sister. And I think this is the narrative we are fed with.
Yeah, I think we need to be able to listen to our intuition as parents. And similarly, we need to make sure that we are not squashing the intuition of our children because of everything that we've downloaded and when our own fears and our own concerns come into the way. And then suddenly, we are allowing the external noise to come into play and shutting down what is the most natural asset that comes with birth and early childhood, which is intuition.
Yeah.
So keeping that space.
You should listen to your inner voice.
Of course. And I mean, I think you've heard of Dr. Shefali.
Yeah.
Dr. Shefali is so great. And one of the things that Dr. Shefali has spoken about has been delusional idea that our children, that we are the teachers of our children, that they come into the world and we are here to teach them, and that we somehow, they belong to us somehow. And what we soon discover is that our children, they are the clearest mirror that we are ever going to look into. And they actually come to teach us something about ourselves and not the other way around. Yes, we're there to give them boundaries and guidelines and offer them information from our own experience. But they do the same for us, if not more. And we need to make space for them to be who they are. We need to find ways to be able to guide them through the different stages of their life.
Absolutely. And I think Dr. Shefali is one of the very famous parenting coach,
Yes.
right? So you also spoke about one book which impacted you a lot.
Very much so. Yeah, I have it with me, actually. It is, I'll just show it to you guys here, which is Gordon Neufeld and Gabor Mate's Hold On to Your Kids.
Mm-hmm.
This book was very much a milestone moment for me in my parenting because of a very important message. Okay, he actually has it right on the cover, which is why parents need to matter more than peers for children. During the developmental stages, a child needs their parents, but they need their parents in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we mix. I'll give you an example. A mother who is really concerned that her child will not develop independence will let the baby cry himself to sleep because she wants to make sure that he can learn to self-soothe. When in reality, at that stage of development, the child's primary need is not to learn independence, but to be attached,
to be and
to
to get
develop
love
trust.
and care. Yeah,
Correct. Because that trust is what organically creates independence in the future. Now, when it comes to the teen years, and particularly in the teen years, once again, we get caught up in this idea that, oh, now he's a big boy, he's 13, he's 14, I need to back up, which is true. It is the job of the teenage years to separate yourself from your parents because you are trying to find out who you are and where your place is in the world. But we often as parents confuse that with they don't need us anymore. And we create separation that's actually not intuitive to us as parents. And so Gabor Mate and Gordon Neufeld are reminding us that if you create a gap and he has a need, he will go fill that need. If you're not going to fill it for him, he will find somebody else to fill it. And who is that person? His friend, the peers. So he's now being taught and trained and raised
by his friends. Yeah.
And so he's calling out for people to remember what it was like, or what it remains actually. So you've got the ancient communities and how community used to be a way of raising kids.
Yes.
And how
it takes a village to raise a kid.
It takes a village to raise a kid is that statement, which is entirely true. It has not changed.
Yes.
There are more rural or remote villages where a community is still, the people that are raising the children.
Absolutely.
And those children have different adults in their lives that are there to help them. When today, where I might have my son who's got several teachers and then he's got a couple of different coaches and then he's got his peers. How am I making sure that we have
imbibing your values, the values of your
exactly. How am I making sure that we're having these conversations, that I'm making sure he's slotting space in his life for us to have that time to have those conversations? How does my parenting change from when he was young and I was providing instructional?
So that means you need to change your parenting style as your kids grow up.
Of course, right? Because when they were younger, they may not have had the words or they may not have even known how to do something. Whereas they get to a point where they need to understand the why behind why they do things. And so it's less of a teaching, instructional, and more of a guiding and mentoring approach. And so I ask a lot of questions now with my teen boys. It's less do this and this is how, and it's more of how do you feel about this? Why did you choose to do that? What do you think? And really allowing
asking them the right kind of questions.
Yes.
Right. So that we get to know about what are they feeling at this particular stage.
Yes.
And I feel, reading books regarding parenting and like going for online courses regarding parenting, it is so important these days, because as parents, the mistake that we are making is that we think that parenting comes naturally to us because we are parents and, it's very natural that we will learn all the parenting styles. But I think it is so important to invest in yourself and read books so that you learn about what are the expectations of your kids and in what stage they are, what are their emotional challenges, because it changes with age. Sometimes we are just considering them as small kids and they've grown up in their emotional ability, in their, physically they've grown up, they're taller, and they've grown up in terms of their thoughts. And we're just in our cocoon and we're thinking that they're just our kids.
I agree with you to a certain degree. I think I came to a point in my parenting where I realized I was doing so much reading that I was no longer listening to what I knew to be true.
But you have to create a balance.
So you have that word. Yeah. You have to be able to take what you need from the content and then put it through your own system of understanding and what you know deep down to be true and apply as you see fit. But I think the learning happens more back to Dr. Shafali and her thinking is we discover that it's about ourselves. It's really about where we are coming from and the projections that we put out through our parenting and the fears that we end up basically, projecting onto our children. And so the work does end up becoming more about you and about how you can heal your own wounds in order to be the best version of yourself for your children.
Absolutely. Nancy, it was wonderful to talk to you about the nitty-gritties of parenting, about emotional intelligence, how to tackle your emotions, and obviously about branding. So what is that one message you would like to give to all the moms who are on a trajectory of, escalating in their careers and they're also parenting their kids?
Yeah.
So that leads to some kind of confusion where, we think that should we give enough time to our kids or our career, because both are equally important to us. So what is that one message as an emotional intelligence coach? What message would you like to give to all the moms?
I mean, first and foremost, give yourself grace. I think we're quite hard on ourselves. And that typical mom guilt can get in the way, and spending so much time thinking about the guilt is just obviously not helpful. I think being able to reframe things and take things a day at a time, showing our kids that we are also learning in the process and staying curious. Curiosity is one of those traits that I don't think gets enough airtime. If I'm being honest, it is so underrated, but your ability to stay curious about not just yourself, the people around you, the reasons why we behave the way we do, the reasons why people are driven to make the decisions.
That's what self-awareness is, right?
It's such a huge part of self-awareness. And so stay curious. I think that rigidity that we sometimes have, the meaning making, we have an emotion, we attach a meaning to it. We kind of stick to this rigid thinking that this is the reason why we do the things we do. I mean, there's no perfect formula that's exactly the same for any one person around being able to manage life and do everything at the same time. So you find yours and you also give a little bit to God. There is a divine order of all things. And I truly believe in that. I can easily sit here and say, well, I didn't achieve this. I didn't achieve that. I wanted to this. I wanted to that. Have your moment of whatever grief you need to have. We always say every emotion has its space, but don't dwell on it.
Embrace those emotions.
Embrace those emotions, accept them, look at them, and then separate them from yourself. Say thank you very much.
Because each emotion is trying to tell you something, even if usually we say that certain emotion is negative or certain emotion is positive, but no emotion is negative, right?
No.
And each emotion is trying to tell us something.
Right.
Yeah.
Something like anger, an emotion like anger, we can think of as a negative emotion, but obviously the emotion of anger can have impacts on our body, but holding that emotion inside of you will actually have even more impacts on your body that are physiological, right? When we talk about dis-ease, it's because you're holding on to something and you're not giving it its space to exist. And so simply accepting the emotion and then being able to then say, okay, how do I
take a step back and find out what was that leading?
What was that? Why was that? Ask why 7 times, 8 times to find the real source, and then being able to go, okay, how do I propel myself from that? Anger is often the starting point of some of the most amazing
jealousy
we've seen. Yeah, but even just all of the quote unquote negative emotions, they are often the beginning points of some of the most amazing things we've seen in our world. Some of the biggest revolutions we've seen, the biggest and the most courageous acts of change and revolution have started because somebody was angry. So give it its space.
Yeah. And, this reminds me of a fact. So whenever I give trainings for emotional intelligence, I always quote this example. Like, if I speak about anger, or if I speak about jealousy, which we term usually as negative emotion, and I would always tell my students or people who are being trained from me, and I tell them as an emotional intelligence coach that when I wanted to become an author, so I was never jealous of somebody who was into acting, or somebody who was a doctor, who was flying, a pilot, but there was a streak of jealousy with a writer. So that emotion was telling me something,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, that's right.
And because I wanted to be in that field, I wanted to be a writer at some point in time, but I never wanted to be a pilot or a doctor or an actress.
Yes.
So that's how you have to know
Yes.
and understand what that certain emotion is telling you, and
Envy is
it
a
can propel
fantastic
you
emotion.
further, right?
Envy is a fantastic emotion because it's exactly that. It is revealing something that you really want.
Yeah.
So it's an opportunity to act. It's an opportunity to go, oh my gosh, I want that so bad. So what are you going to do about it? That's it. Don't dwell in the negativity of the emotion. Use it as a way to propel.
Yes.
Right?
And I think emotional intelligence is truly the skill of today and future.
Oh my gosh, that is such a great way to end our conversation, because I think that we are not giving emotional intelligence yet, not just in our education systems and in our corporate cultures in general. We are not giving emotional intelligence the equality. Frankly, to me, it's even higher than IQ, and we're seeing more and more how real achievement, long-term and sustainable achievement comes easier and more naturally to people with higher EQ. And today we are still, as parents, constantly pushing the IQ.
Yeah.
What are the grades you got here? How are you doing in this
fact,
topic?
EI supersedes IQ.
Well, if the child is not getting a great grade, but has shown you that he can pick himself up off the floor in a time of challenge and move on.
It's so important.
Which is the one that, sit in a room with parents and ask them, what do you want for your kids? They'll say happiness. They'll say resilience. They'll say all those great words, but the way that we parent doesn't translate. It doesn't align to that.
Yeah.
So give the grade a little bit less meaning, and give the way that they handled themselves a little bit more meaning.
Yeah.
And how they communicate, and give those things meaning, and see how that flows.
So that reminds me of an incident. So my kid was having an online class during COVID. She was just 5 or 6 years old that time. And the teacher was asking all the students, what do you want to be when you grow up? That point in time, she didn't know that I want to be a doctor. I'm just little kids, 5 or 6 years. They don't have ambitions. And I was sitting next to her and I said, see, all the kids are saying that they want to be a teacher or a doctor or an actress or whatever. So what do you want to be? And she said, Mama, I just want to be happy. And, I just loved her answer. Eventually, we want to be happy. Yeah. So
whatever it may be, I think in so many words, she was saying, I don't know. Thing, but whatever will make me happy, that's what I'll do.
Why do we expect this from kids? What do you want to be? They want to be happy. They want to be in the moment and enjoy the present, right?
Yes. Coming back to this idea of a professional career and parenting and showing our children how we can do both things, I think it's really commendable to be able to say, I can do hard things. This is not always comfortable, but we can do hard things.
Yeah.
The belief that...
And learn in the process.
Yes, the belief that it's okay. The discussion around failing fast, have the emotions around the failure, and then bounce back up again. But then also to have fun. We make adulting look terrible sometimes. Do you agree that sometimes our kids are looking up at us and going, is that what it is to be an adult? Yeah. I don't want to do that. So let's
race.
Right? Let's be responsible for how we're showing our children what it is to be an adult.
That's a very important point.
We make it look terrible most of the time.
Yeah.
Things like, your dad is working so hard. He's so tired now. Or
I admit, I tell this to my kids.
We all do that. And we forget that all the other part of the message that's coming across is that it sucks to be an adult. And now if you go and you survey children, and I think there's some studies already been done on this, you ask them, do you want to have kids when you grow up? The answer is starting to decline.
Mm-hmm.
And because we're not making it look fun. We're making it look like this horrible task.
Yeah.
And we're making it look like working and earning a career and parenting at the same time.
And we're not
just
showing that we are happy. Happiness is like forgotten.
Yeah.
Just struggling. That's what our kids are learning from us.
But that also that hard work sucks. That working hard must be attached to something negative, a negative emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've equalized these two things. Hard work must be, the word hard has this underlining meaning. Maybe hard is great. Maybe we need to reframe so much of this language. Reframing is such a key skill in emotional intelligence, as well as NLP and so many theories of coaching, right?
Yeah.
So reframing is another really key point.
That was so wonderful to talk to you, Nancy, over branding, or emotional intelligence, how to handle our own emotions, and how to be an example for our kids. Right.
Thank you.
So it was lovely conversation.
Thank you so much, Shabina. What you're doing with this podcast is really great.
And if you're looking for to be on a hot seat as Nancy, please contact me at Real Shabina. That's my Instagram handle. And you can also contact Nancy, who's an emotional intelligence coach. She is into neuroscience, and she makes more amazing Instagram reels. So you can contact Nancy on.
Yes, so you can reach me on Instagram. Anything related to emotional intelligence, you'll find on my personal Instagram, Nancy_Habashi, Habashi. And everything related to branding with a touch of that neuroscience, emotional intelligence, and psychology, you can find at inlight.consulting. So inlight.consulting is the handle for my Instagram.
Thank you, and stay tuned to Mom's Bookshelf Emotional Intelligence series for more such fun, loving, intellectual insights. Thank you.